We thought this was more practical than a cruise, Mom. It's a prepaid cremation plan. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, between the hum of the stainless steel refrigerator and the faint, rhythmic ticking of a designer clock on the wall. My son, Ethan, held his phone aloft, a polished black rectangle capturing the moment for his unseen audience. A small red dot in the corner of his screen pulsed with a life of its own. Live. He was broadcasting my own funeral arrangements as a birthday gift. His smile was a work of art, a carefully constructed expression of concerned benevolence he had perfected for his social media brand. It was a smile that didn't touch his eyes. His eyes were busy, flitting between my face and the stream of digital hearts floating up his screen. "No fuss, no muss," my daughter Chloe chirped from his side, her voice a little too high, a little too bright. She leaned into the frame, her blonde hair catching the cold, recessed lighting of the kitchen. "We're thinking ahead for you. Being responsible. It's what you taught us, right?" They were standing in Ethan's kitchen in Maple Creek, a space so pristine it felt less like a home and more like a showroom. White marble countertops stretched out like frozen lakes, reflecting the stark modern light fixtures. There were no smudges on the chrome, no clutter on the counters, no sign of life beyond the two of them and me, perched at the corner of the vast island like a forgotten statue. In front of me sat a single, lonely cupcake. The frosting was a pale chemical pink, and the single, sad candle planted in its center listed to one side, its flame a weak, flickering tongue of light that threatened to extinguish with every breath. This was my 70th birthday party. This sterile island was my stage, the cupcake my prop, and I, the guest of honor, was merely the supporting actress in their performance of being the world's most dutiful, forward-thinking children. I looked at the box they'd placed on the counter. It wasn't wrapped. It was a stark white document folder with the logo of a local final services provider printed in a somber, tasteful navy blue. Practical. They had called it practical. The word echoed in the silent spaces of my mind. It was a word one used for a good pair of shoes or a reliable toaster, not for the disposal of one's own mother. Ethan's phone was still aimed at my face, waiting for a reaction. He wanted tears, perhaps, a quavering, grateful whisper, something that would play well to the dozens, maybe hundreds, of strangers watching. Something that would validate his narrative of the burdensome old mother and her saintly, patient son. I gave him nothing. My hands, resting in my lap, felt cold and distant, the knuckles tight. I focused on the feeling of the cheap, thin fabric of my cardigan, a garment they'd picked out for me last Christmas, another practical gift. Inside, my mind, the mind they believed was fogged with age and forgetfulness, was a razor. I was a chemist for 40 years. I understood reactions. I understood the precise measurement of ingredients, the careful application of heat or cold, the patient waiting for the inevitable, predictable result. What I was witnessing was a social chemical reaction, and I was the inert element they were trying to dissolve. "Mom, are you okay?" Chloe's voice softened. A new tactic. This was the gentle, concerned daughter role. She reached out and patted my hand, her touch as light and meaningless as a fly landing on stone. Her nails were perfectly manicured, the same shade of pink as the cupcake's frosting. "You look a little overwhelmed." We know it's a lot to take in. Overwhelmed wasn't the word. Hollowed out, perhaps. Erased. I felt like a ghost at my own wake. I could remember my 30th birthday. My husband, David, had filled our small apartment with sunflowers because he knew they were my favorite. He'd baked a lopsided cake himself, and we'd eaten it on the floor, laughing until our sides ached. There was no audience, no performance. There was only the messy, vibrant, unpredictable substance of a shared life. That memory felt like a story from another world, a life lived by someone else. The woman who had laughed on the floor with her husband was not this woman, sitting silently under the glare of an iPhone, being presented with her own death as a convenience. "It's just," I started, my voice raspy from disuse. I cleared my throat, playing the part. I let my eyes drift to the cupcake, to the drooping candle. "It's very thoughtful." The word was ash in my mouth. But it was the right ingredient for their formula. Ethan's smile widened, becoming genuine for the first time. It was the smile of victory. "See? I told you she'd get it," he said, angling the phone slightly to capture both of our faces. "Mom always appreciates pragmatism. No point in being sentimental about these things. No point in being sentimental." He said this as if he were discussing the stock market. I watched his face, the face I had once held in my hands, the face I had washed and kissed and loved with a ferocity that felt like it could stop time. I saw nothing of the boy I knew. I saw a stranger wearing his skin, a man who saw his own mother's life and death as a line item on a budget. Chloe, emboldened, picked up the document folder. And we handled everything, the basic package, simple, clean. You don't have to worry about a thing, ever. She opened it, showing me the neat columns of text, the dotted lines where a signature would one day go. My signature. Or theirs, once they had the power to sign it for me. I saw words like cremains, urn, disposition, clinical, sterile, the language of waste management. My silence was their canvas, and they painted on it with abandon. They talked about the rising costs of funerals, how they were saving the estate money. What estate? They believed I had nothing. David, my quiet, unassuming David, had been a meticulous accountant, they thought. A man of modest means. They had no idea the truth of the ledgers he kept, the real nature of the numbers he managed. They had no idea that their entire lives, their pristine kitchens and expensive educations and designer clothes, were all built on a foundation they couldn't even imagine. They saw me as a liability, a drain on their future resources, the final pathetic expense to be managed. And then, Ethan decided the performance needed a grand finale. He set down his phone, propping it against a ridiculously expensive canister of artisanal sea salt. He walked over to a wine fridge, its blue light glowing like a UFO, and pulled out a bottle of champagne. The pop of the cork was loud, obscene, in the quiet tension of the room. He poured 2 glasses, the bubbles fizzing aggressively. He didn't pour one for me. He handed a glass to Chloe and raised his own, positioning himself so the phone could capture his magnanimous gesture. "A toast," he announced, his voice booming with false cheer. "To Mom!" Chloe raised her glass, her expression a perfect mirror of his practiced sincerity. I sat there, my hands still in my lap, the cupcake still uneaten. The candle had finally given up, the flame guttering out into a wisp of gray smoke that smelled of wax and sugar. Ethan looked directly into the camera lens, then his eyes flickered to me, a glint of something cold and cruel in them. 70 years young, he proclaimed, and not a penny to her name, but she has us. The words landed, not like a slap, but like a slow, deliberate injection of ice into my veins. He didn't just say it to me, he said it to his world. He branded me, poor, penniless mom, a charity case, a 70-year-old burden whose only asset was the begrudging care of her children. Chloe giggled, a sound like glass breaking. She glanced down at the phone. "Oh, look, Ethan, your friends are hilarious." She started reading the comments aloud, her voice dripping with amusement. "Savage, bro," from Kevin. "LOL, my mom would literally disown me." "Oh, that's from Jessica. Anything for the content, I guess," with a laughing emoji. "Wait, here's a good one from Mark. Is she gonna cry? Get the reaction shot." Each comment she read was a small, sharp stone thrown at my face. They thought I didn't understand. They saw me as a relic, a creature from a pre-digital age who couldn't possibly grasp the casual cruelty of their online world. They thought the words, the laughing emojis, the public spectacle of my humiliation would just wash over me, a confusing wave of noise. They were wrong. I understood perfectly. I understood the language of power and the currency of shame. They were stripping me of my dignity, pixel by pixel, comment by comment, in front of a faceless crowd. They were reducing the entirety of my life, my accomplishments, my love, my grief, into a punchline for their entertainment. I looked at them, my children. I saw the hunger in their eyes. It wasn't just for money or status. It was a hunger to be free of me, of the obligation I represented. The cremation plan wasn't a gift for me, it was a gift for them. It was the promise of a future unencumbered by an old woman in a cheap cardigan. Something inside me shifted. The ice in my veins didn't melt. It hardened. It solidified into something crystalline, sharp, and unbreakable. The feeling of humiliation receded, replaced by a profound and chilling clarity. I was no longer a mother feeling the sting of her children's betrayal. I was a scientist observing a phenomenon. I was documenting their methods, their motives, their profound, catastrophic underestimation of their subject. They saw weakness. They saw a frail, forgetful old woman who needed them to manage her life and her death. They saw an empty bank account and an empty future. They looked at me and saw a void. I let them. I let my expression remain placid, my eyes wide and slightly confused. I played the part they had written for me one last time. I let them toast to my poverty. I let them laugh with their friends. I let them believe they had won, that the final act of my life was theirs to direct. But as Ethan drained his champagne and Chloe scrolled through the comments, a silent vow took root in the barren ground of my heart. This moment, this cold kitchen, this pathetic cupcake, this public shaming, this would be the foundation of their ruin. This is the last time I promise the ghost of the woman I used to be. This is the last time they will ever toast to my weakness. My name is Olivia. I am 70 years old. The silence in this little guest house is a universe away from the forced laughter and flashing phone screens of my birthday party. That night feels like a fever dream now, a shrill, tinny performance that has finally ended, leaving only this profound quiet in its wake. They think the quiet is my world now. They are mistaken. The quiet is my laboratory. I am the widow of David. My children, Ethan and Chloe, remember their father as a quiet, almost invisible man, an accountant. That was the word they used, a word that fit him like a neatly tailored but unremarkable suit. Meticulous, they'd say, a man of ledgers and balanced columns, he was. But he was so much more than the sum of his numbers. His love for me wasn't loud. It was a constant, low-burning fire that warmed every corner of our lives. He was the man who would bring me a cup of tea just the way I liked it, without my ever having to ask. He was the one who saw the gears turning in my mind and called it beautiful, not strange. Before I was David's wife, before I was Ethan and Chloe's mother, I was a chemist. My world was one of elements and compounds, of reactions and catalysts. I understood that a single, seemingly insignificant addition could change the nature of everything. In the lab, I felt a sense of power, of order. I could predict outcomes. I could control variables. My hands, now spotted with age and wrinkled from washing my grandchildren's clothes, once measured precise, volatile substances. My mind, which my children now believe is addled and slow, once wrestled with complex molecular structures. I gave it up when Ethan was born. It wasn't a sacrifice I was forced to make, but a choice I made willingly, trading my beakers and lab coat for a life of building a family, of nurturing these two little beings into the adults they are today. I never regretted it. Not once. I poured all my precision, all my focus, into them. I saw them as my most important, most complex experiment. When David died 5 years ago, it felt like a crucial element had been removed from my life's equation, leaving everything unstable. The house we had shared for 40 years, the house where every wall held a memory, suddenly felt vast and cold. Ethan and his wife Sarah suggested I sell it. It was too much for one person, they said. It was practical. My children are nothing if not practical. So I sold the home where I had raised them, the garden where I had taught them to tell a weed from a flower, and moved into this. The guest house. It's a small one-room building on the edge of their manicured property, just a stone's throw from their sprawling modern home. They call it caring for me. They post photos on social media. #family first, #taking care of mom. Their friends praise them for their selflessness. In reality, I am a ghost. I am the keeper of a quiet house that is not my own. My presence is functional. I am the unpaid live-in nanny who gets their children, Maya and Leo, ready for school in the morning so Ethan and Sarah can get to their important jobs. I am the one who picks them up in the afternoon, who helps with homework, who make sure their little bellies are full when their parents come home late, smelling of expensive perfume and restaurant food. I am the laundress who washes and folds their clothes, the subtle scent of their lives passing through my hands. I am the house cleaner who wipes away the spills and crumbs they leave in their wake, erasing the daily evidence of their chaotic, privileged existence. I move through their main house like a whisper, my footsteps soft, my voice softer. They have grown so accustomed to my service that they no longer see it. They simply expect it, like the sun rising in the morning. I am a utility, a feature of the house. And like an old appliance, they think I am slowly breaking down. My mind, my intellect, the very core of who I once was, has been dismissed. To them, I am just a sweet, simple old woman, losing her grip on the world. A relic. This is my life now. It is a carefully, meticulously constructed performance of helplessness. It is the greatest experiment I have ever conducted. My frailty is my camouflage. My confusion is my armor. Every day is a new scene, and I am the lead actress in a play only I understand. This morning, for example, Ethan was in a rush, his tie askew, yelling about a quarterly report. The television, a sleek black mirror on their wall, was displaying some garish cartoon for the kids. I walked in, clutching my shawl around my shoulders, and blinked at the screen with wide, uncomprehending eyes. "Oh, Ethan, dear," I began, my voice a little shaky, a little thin. "I can't seem to figure out this contraption. I just wanted to see the morning news. There are so many buttons on this remote." He let out a long, theatrical sigh, the kind that is meant to be heard. It was a sound I knew well. It was the sound of his patience wearing thin. "Mom, we've been over this. It's not that hard. It's all apps. You just click on the icon." He snatched the remote from my hand, his movements sharp and impatient. He jabbed at the screen with his finger. "See? News. Right there. Just try to remember this time, okay? I have a meeting." He didn't wait for an answer, just rushed out the door, leaving the scent of his annoyance lingering in the air. I looked at the screen, my face a perfect mask of bewildered gratitude. Inside, I was dissecting the moment. I knew perfectly well how to operate the television. I had read the entire manual online, a PDF I'd found in seconds. In my old life, I'd worked on a project developing the very polymers used in these high-definition screens. But he didn't need to know that. His condescension was a data point. His impatience was a variable I could measure. Later in the week, it was Chloe's turn. She came by with a stack of my mail, which she now has redirected to her own house for safekeeping. She sat at the small table in my guest house, her designer handbag placed carefully beside her, a pristine barrier between her world and mine. She fanned out the envelopes. "Okay, Mom, let's go through these," she said, her tone bright and condescending, the one she probably uses with her assistant. She opened my bank statement. "So, this is your Social Security deposit. See that number? That's what you have for the month." I leaned in, squinting. "Oh my, the numbers are so small, dear. It all looks so complicated." I let my hand tremble just a little as I pointed to the balance. "Is that enough? David always handled these things. My mind just gets so jumbled." Chloe patted my hand, a gesture that was meant to be comforting, but felt like a dismissal. "Don't you worry your little head about it, Mom. That's why I'm here. I'll make sure all the bills are paid. You just focus on resting." She smiled, a perfect, polished smile that didn't reach her eyes. She saw a frail, financially illiterate old woman who was a burden, a problem to be managed. She had no idea I was balancing a different kind of ledger in my head. I saw every dollar she was managing. I knew my Social Security number by heart, and I also knew the precise withdrawal she'd made last week for what she'd called groceries, though the amount matched the price of the new shoes she was wearing. I saw it all. I let her believe she was in complete control of my meager finances, my tiny, shrinking world. This dependence they have engineered is my greatest weapon. It is the cloak of invisibility that allows me to watch and to listen. I hear the whispered conversations when they think I'm napping, the complaints about the cost of my upkeep, the discussions about my declining state. They speak freely around me, for the same reason one might speak freely in front of a grandfather clock or a potted fern. I am part of the furniture. I am not a person. I am a presence, And with every condescending sigh from Ethan, with every patronizing pat on the hand from Chloe, they are unknowingly doing my work for me. They think they are chipping away at my dignity, breaking me down piece by piece. They don't understand the chemistry of a soul. They don't understand pressure. Some things crumble under pressure, but other things crystallize. They become harder, sharper, unbreakable. Every insult, every exasperated eye roll, every moment they treat me as less than human, is another log on a fire they cannot see. It is a slow, patient burn, deep within me, and soon the heat will become so intense it will be impossible for them to ignore. They think they are watching me fade away, but I am just gathering fuel. The days bleed into one another, each one a copy of the last, distinguished only by the slow, methodical turning of the seasons outside the guesthouse window. My world has shrunk to these four walls, this small patch of manicured lawn, and the path to the main house, a path I tread with the quiet resignation of a ghost. The air in Ethan and Sarah's home is different. It's thick with a kind of sterile ambition, smelling of expensive air fresheners and the faint, bitter scent of resentment. They treat me not with overt cruelty, but with a far more soul-crushing indifference. I am a piece of furniture that occasionally needs to be fed and spoken to, a relic from a past they are eager to file away. My meals are a study in this polite degradation. They eat at a grand oak table David and I bought for our 20th anniversary. I am given a small, wobbly card table in the corner of the kitchen, near the trash can. Sarah says it's so I can be closer to the action without having to navigate the dining room, a kindness that tastes like poison. They eat from heavy, artisanal ceramic plates. My food is served on a chipped plastic plate, the kind you buy for toddlers. My glass is a sturdy, thick plastic cup. Sarah once explained it was for my own safety, in case my shaky hands dropped it. I have never dropped a glass in my life. I watch them eat their grilled salmon and asparagus, the clinking of their silverware, a symphony of exclusion. My meal is often a simple sandwich, or the reheated leftovers from the night before, the portion carefully measured to be just enough. My grandson, little Leo, once tried to bring his chair over to sit with me. "No, sweetie," Sarah had cooed, swooping in to redirect him. "Let Grandma have her peace and quiet. She gets overwhelmed." Leo looked back at me, his brow furrowed in confusion, before being absorbed back into the warmth of his family. I was left in my designated corner, a satellite in a cold, distant orbit from their sun. This is my life now. A series of 1,000 tiny cuts, each one too small to protest without seeming hysterical, but which collectively are bleeding me dry. It is a Tuesday, I think. The sun is high, and the hum of the dishwasher provides the soundtrack to my morning chores. My hands, wrinkled but still steady, move through the warm, soapy water. I always take off David's ring, a simple, heavy gold band, and place it in the small porcelain dish on the windowsill when I wash up. It's a ritual as old as our marriage. After the last plate is dried and put away, I turn to retrieve it. The dish is empty. A cold fist clenches in my stomach. It's not a frantic panic, but a slow, creeping dread. I check the counter. I run my hand along the windowsill. I look on the floor, my old knees protesting as I bend. Nothing. It is simply gone. I walk into the living room where Ethan is on his laptop, the rapid click-clack of the keys filling the space. Sarah is on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, a placid smile on her face. "Ethan," I say. My voice sounds thin, reedy. He doesn't look up. "Ethan, I can't find my wedding ring." He stops typing but keeps his eyes on the screen. "Oh yeah. About that." He finally swivels in his chair, his expression not one of guilt, but of mild annoyance, as if I've interrupted something important. "I sold it, Mom." The words hang in the air, so casual, so utterly devoid of feeling that for a moment they don't register. Sold it. He says the words as if he were telling me he sold an old lawnmower. "You mean what?" I whisper, my hand instinctively going to my bare ring finger. "The property tax bill came. It was a couple thousand more than we expected," he explains, leaning back in his chair, steepling his fingers. He adopts the patient tone one uses for a difficult child. "The ring was just sitting in that dish. You never wear it out of the house. It was a practical solution. It paid the bill. You're welcome. You're welcome. The phrase echoes in the cavernous space that has just opened up inside my chest. He thinks he did me a favor. He liquidated the last physical piece of my 47-year marriage to pay a bill for a house he lives in, a house he feels entitled to. I look at him, at this man who shares my blood, this son I raised, and I see a stranger, a cold, calculating stranger wearing my son's face. I look over at Sarah. She is studiously examining her fingernails, refusing to meet my eye. She is complicit in her silence. There is nothing to say. An outburst would only confirm their narrative of me as a senile, overly emotional old woman. A scene would be unseemly, so I do the only thing I can. I turn around, walk back to the guest house, and take out the small leather-bound journal David gave me years ago. I open it to a fresh page, my hand trembling slightly as I write down the date. I don't write what happened. I don't need to. The date is enough. It is another cut, deeper than the rest, noted and recorded. A few weeks later, Chloe arrives for her monthly welfare check. She breezes in, all expensive perfume and performative concern, her arms full of designer shopping bags. "Mom! Oh, you look so tired," she says, kissing the air beside my cheek. She doesn't wait for a response. "I was just looking at your bank statement online, and I am so worried. There are all these little charges, and you get so many of those scam emails. It's a miracle you haven't given away your life savings to some Nigerian prince." She pulls up a chair and opens her sleek silver laptop, her long manicured nails clicking on the keyboard. "Look at this," she says, pointing to an email with a flashy subject line. "You almost clicked on that, didn't you? You can't be trusted with this stuff, Mom. It's too dangerous." Before I can protest, before I can tell her that I know a phishing scam when I see one, that my mind is as sharp as it ever was, she is already talking over me. "I'm just going to simplify things. For your protection. It's the loving thing to do." I watch, a helpless passenger, as she navigates to my online banking portal. She asks for my password. I hesitate, a flicker of defiance stirring within me. Her face hardens. "Mom, don't be difficult. I'm trying to help you." Her voice is honey-laced with steel. Defeated, I give it to her. She types, clicks a few times, and then smiles, a bright, false smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "There. All done. I've changed the password and set up a new one. I'll keep it safe for you. And I did the same for your email. No more scary scammers for you to worry about." She closes the laptop with a decisive snap. "From now on, I'll handle your bills. And so you have some walking around money, I'll give you a little allowance each week. How does $60 sound?" "That's more than enough for your little knitting things, right?" She hands me 3 crisp $20 bills from her wallet, a wallet that probably cost 10 times that amount. I am a 70-year-old woman, a former chemist with 2 patents to my name, being given an allowance by my daughter like a sullen teenager. The humiliation is a physical thing, a hot flush that creeps up my neck. I take the money because refusing would create a conflict, and conflict is something they can use as evidence. So I take it, and I nod, playing the part of the grateful, doddering mother. The next evening, I'm watching little Leo play a game on his tablet. He gets bored and switches to TikTok. And there she is. Chloe. In a professionally lit video, she twirls in a ridiculously expensive dress, the tag's likely still on it. The caption reads, "Had girl boss, hard work pays off, treat yourself." In another, she shows off a new handbag, its leather gleaming under the lights. Blessed. She winks at the camera. I feel a wave of nausea. This is where my money is going. This is the protection she was so concerned about. Later, unable to sleep, I use the guest house's ancient desktop computer to try and access my credit report through a free service. I have to guess the answers to security questions she has likely changed. What was your first pet's name? What street did you grow up on? After several failed attempts, I finally get in. The screen loads, and I feel the air leave my lungs. 3 new credit cards, all in my name, all opened within the last month, all maxed out. My credit score, a pristine number that David had guarded with fierce pride, a symbol of our fiscal responsibility and integrity, is in ruins. It's a field of red warnings and late payment notices. This isn't just about money. It's not just greed. It is a systematic erasure. She is overriding my identity with her own reckless consumption. She has stolen my name, my history of prudence, and sullied it for the sake of temporary, flashy garbage she can post online. This cut is not on my skin. It is on my very name, the name David gave me. I go back to my journal. I write down the date. I write down the credit card numbers. I write down the balances. The ink is dark and final on the page. Each stroke of the pen is a promise to myself. This will not be forgotten. The days that follow are a blur of quiet indignities. The television in my room is suddenly blocked from all but the most basic channels. "We're cutting costs, Mom," Ethan says, avoiding my gaze. "You don't watch those movie channels anyway." They have a family movie night, and I can hear the sounds of a new blockbuster film through the walls while I stare at a grainy game show from the 1980s. The locks on the main house are changed. They give me a new key for the front door, but not for the deadbolt. After 9 p.m., I'm effectively locked out of the house I technically own, confined to my little outbuilding. I am a prisoner on my own property. The final, most chilling piece of their plan reveals itself on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The main house is quiet. I assume they are out. I need to borrow some sugar, and I walk over, using my key to let myself in. The air is still. I'm heading toward the kitchen when I hear their voices coming from the study, the door slightly ajar. They are not alone. There is a third voice, a man's, thin and tinny through a speakerphone. "And her behavior has become increasingly erratic," Ethan is saying. I freeze, my hand hovering over the doorknob to the kitchen. My heart begins to beat a frantic, heavy rhythm against my ribs. She forgets things constantly. She misplaced her wedding ring just last month and became very agitated. We're worried she's a danger to herself. He doesn't mention that he sold it. He twists the truth into a weapon to be used against me. "We found her wandering the garden at night," Chloe adds, her voice dripping with fabricated concern. "She's clearly not of sound mind. We think getting power of attorney is the only responsible step forward." The lawyer's voice crackles through the speaker. "To have her declared legally incompetent, you'll need a doctor's evaluation. But based on what you're describing, it sounds like a strong case. Once you have power of attorney, you'll be able to make all decisions on her behalf, for her own good, of course." For her own good. The words are a shroud they are trying to wrap me in. "And what about the house?" Ethan asks, his voice lowering, becoming conspiratorial. "We need to sell. This place is too big. The taxes are a nightmare. We need to move her into a facility that can provide proper care." "A state-run facility is probably the best option financially," Chloe chimes in, her voice cold and practical. "We can use the proceeds from the sale to set up a small fund for her expenses there." I lean against the cool wall of the hallway, my breath caught in my throat. They are planning to strip me of everything, my home, my freedom, my very mind. They want to institutionalize me, to pack me away in some sterile state-funded room where I can be forgotten, while they cash in on my life's work. Then Ethan says the words that seal their fate. The words that prove how little they ever knew about their father, about me, about the life we truly built. "That shouldn't be a problem," he says with casual confidence. Dad's will was very clear. He left the main house and the property to Chloe and me. The guest house was left to Mom for her lifetime. A miscalculation, a fatal, ruinous miscalculation. They are building their entire monstrous plan on a foundation of lies and a complete ignorance of the truth. They believe they are holding all the cards, that they are methodically and cleverly cornering a weak, senile old woman. They have no idea that they are the ones walking into a trap. I don't get the sugar. I back away from the door, my movements silent and precise. I retreat to the guest house, the rain now lashing against the windows. I feel no fear. The despair that has been my constant companion for months has burned away, leaving behind something cold and hard and clear. It is the clarity of a person with nothing left to lose. I sit at my small desk and open the journal one more time. I write the date, and underneath it, I write a single sentence. They want to declare me incompetent. It is the 1,000th cut, and it is the one that has finally turned the paper knife into a sword in my hand. They think they are planning my end. They have no idea they are merely triggering my beginning. 5 years. It feels both like a lifetime and the briefest of moments since the world tilted on its axis and David was gone. Today marks the 5th anniversary of the day the silence in our home became permanent. I spend the morning in the guest house, which is a generous term for the converted garage Ethan and his wife allow me to occupy. The air is thick with the scent of bleach and their children's discarded laundry, a pile of which sits accusingly in a basket by the door. I fold, as I always do. I fold their socks, their shirts, the small, brightly colored clothes of the grandchildren who know me only as the quiet woman who makes them toast. The clock on the microwave is a relentless tyrant, its green digits marching forward. 4:57. 4:58. My hands, wrinkled and spotted with age, smooth a crease on a pair of Ethan's jeans. They are the hands of a stranger. I remember them holding beakers, adjusting finely calibrated instruments, covered in the faint, clean scent of a laboratory. Now they smell of fabric softener and subjugation. David's last words to me were not a comfort. They were an instruction, delivered with the same dispassionate precision he used to balance a chemical equation. His breath was shallow, the hospital room a sterile white box, but his eyes were clear, focused. "I love you," was a sentiment for other couples, for a life we never quite lived. His final gift was a key. "The nightingale only sings at dusk," he'd whispered, his voice a dry rustle of leaves. "Trust the keeper. The ledger is the key." Dusk. For 5 years, I have watched the sun set, waiting for a song I wasn't sure would ever come. I've played the part they assigned me, the grieving widow, the doting grandmother, the doddering old woman with a dwindling pension, a harmless, helpless burden. It was a role I had to perfect, a long con of feigned fragility. The clock blinks. 4:59. My heart begins a slow, heavy drumbeat against my ribs, a dull thudding I can feel in my throat. I am sitting at the small Formica table, my laptop open. It's an old model Chloe gave me after she upgraded, so you can see pictures of the kids, Mom. What she meant was, so she could monitor me. I know my emails are mirrored to her phone. I know every password I use is one she set and logged. I am a fly in a digital jar, and my daughter is the child watching it struggle. 5:00 p.m. It appears. A single unread message in my inbox. It's so understated it's almost invisible among the pharmacy ads and the Daily Deals newsletter. The sender is a name I haven't seen in 5 years. Vance Sterling. My breath catches. The subject line is just 3 words, but they detonate in the quiet of the room, a silent, seismic shock. Nightingale Protocol. Activation window. This is it. Dusk has fallen. The keeper is calling. My hand trembles as it hovers over the trackpad. I'm not clicking on it. Not yet. I just stare, reading the words over and over. They are real. He was real. This whole insane, impossible thing is real. My carefully constructed facade of a frail old woman cracks, and for a moment, the chemist I used to be looks out through my eyes, analytical and cold. The protocol has been initiated. My phone buzzes on the table, a text from Chloe. The digital leash tightens. I don't need to read it to know what it says. I can hear her voice in my head, dripping with that practiced, weary condescension she reserves for me. I pick up the phone. "What's this scam, Mom? Vance Sterling? Did you click a pop-up ad again? Honestly, you can't be trusted with the internet. I'll take care of it." I type back a response with fingers that feel clumsy and foreign. Oh dear, I don't know. I didn't click anything. The lie is so practiced it tastes like truth. I watch the screen, waiting. She's taking care of it. Of course she is. Chloe, my capable, efficient daughter, who manages my life because she's convinced I no longer can. She, who sold my wedding ring, David's ring, to pay a property tax bill on their house, and told me it was a practical way to help out. She, who changed my banking passwords and took over my accounts to protect me from fraud, only to use my good credit, the credit David meticulously built for me, to open cards in my name and fund a lifestyle of expensive handbags and weekend getaways. They think they are protecting their inheritance, never imagining the truth of what they stand to inherit. Less than an hour passes. Another email arrives. This one isn't from Vance Sterling. It's a forwarded message from Chloe. The original sender is a law firm, Patterson Klein Associates. The subject: cease and desist notification on behalf of our client, Olivia Sterling. My own name, weaponized against me. I open the attached PDF. The language is brutal, clinical. It's addressed to a Mr. Elias Vance. It has come to our attention that you have attempted to contact our client's mother, Mrs. Olivia Sterling, a vulnerable adult of 70 years of age. Mrs. Sterling is currently under the care of her children, who manage her affairs due to her diminished cognitive state. A documented history of confusion and susceptibility to manipulation. This letter serves as a formal demand that you cease and desist all further contact. Any subsequent attempts to communicate with Mrs. Sterling will be viewed as elder abuse and predatory targeting of a senior citizen, and we will not hesitate to pursue all available legal remedies, including a restraining order and formal complaints to the state bar. My own children. They have built my cage, and now they are hiring lawyers to reinforce the bars. They've painted a picture of me as a senile old woman, a legal fiction they can use to sever my last lifeline to David's world. The words blur on the screen. Diminished cognitive state. Susceptibility to manipulation. It's the story they've been telling themselves for years, the one they whisper to their friends to justify their cruelty. And the most terrifying part is that, for a moment, I almost believe them. The lawyer's letter sits in my inbox like a tombstone. For the next day, I do nothing. I fold more laundry. I make toast for the grandchildren. I smile my vacant, pleasant smile when Chloe's husband pats me on the head and calls me Ollie Pop. But inside, the gears of my mind have seized. A cold, creeping fog of doubt begins to roll in, thicker and more suffocating than any real-world mist. Have I been fooling myself? The gaslighting, the constant, subtle erosion of my confidence has been a slow poison. Maybe they're right. Maybe David wasn't a brilliant, shadowy figure running a financial empire. Maybe he was just a paranoid accountant, a quiet man whose eccentricities I have woven into a grand, desperate fantasy. A fantasy to make my lonely, diminished life feel significant. I hear Chloe's voice in my memory, sharp and impatient. "Mom, we talked about this yesterday, don't you remember?" We hadn't. I hear Ethan laughing on his live stream. My mom, bless her heart, not a penny to her name, but rich in, well, she's rich in time. The humiliation was a physical blow. Is this protocol, this email from a man I haven't seen in years, just another manifestation of my own decay? The delusion of a lonely old woman who wants to believe she was more than just a wife and a mother? The thought is paralyzing. The weight of their narrative is immense. I am one person against the world they've built around me. I walk through the main house in the dead of night when they are all asleep. I touch the photos on the mantelpiece. There's David and me, years ago, smiling on a beach. He looks so ordinary. A man in a slightly too large polo shirt, his arm around a younger, happier version of me. There's nothing in his eyes to suggest a secret life, nothing to hint at the existence of ledgers and keepers and nightingales that sing at dusk. My doubt hardens into a knot of despair in my stomach. Maybe the plan is to simply let the activation window close, to let Elias Vance believe I am indeed incompetent or dead, to let my children win. I could live out my remaining years in this guest house, a ghost in my own family, until the prepaid cremation package they so thoughtfully gifted me is finally put to use. The thought brings a surprising bitter kind of peace, the peace of surrender. But David was never a man who surrendered. He was a man of meticulous detail, of contingency plans layered upon contingency plans. He was a chemist, just like me. He believed in evidence. I go to my closet, to the small, locked box tucked away in the back. Inside are the few things of his I insisted on keeping, things Chloe deemed to have no resale value. His worn leather wallet, a few old photographs, and his wristwatch. It's a simple, elegant timepiece, nothing flashy, the kind of watch an accountant would wear. My fingers are stiff as I pick it up. The metal is cold against my skin. I remember him telling me to keep it safe. I always assumed it was for sentimental reasons. I run my thumb over the smooth steel clasp. My heart is quiet now, my mind eerily calm. This is the final test. If there is nothing here, then my children are right. I am lost. With a fingernail, I pry at the edge of the clasp. It's stiff. I press harder, and it clicks open. I turn it over, holding it up to the dim light filtering in from the window. And there it is. It's so small, so faint, I almost miss it. An engraving, etched into the inside of the metal with the precision of a surgeon. It's not a date, or his initials. It's a bird. A tiny, perfect nightingale in mid-song, its beak open, its wings delicately rendered. It's real. The fog of doubt doesn't just lift. It is burned away by a sudden, white-hot surge of adrenaline and rage. It's all real. David was real. The protocol is real. The keeper is real. The legacy he left me, the horrifying, brilliant, and dark legacy, is not a fantasy. It's a fact, engraved in steel. And my children, in their greedy, short-sighted cruelty, have just tried to sever me from it. They have mistaken my patience for weakness, my silence for submission. They have made a fatal error. This isn't just about money anymore. It's not even just about revenge. It is about honoring the last instruction of my husband. It is about claiming what is mine. The email from Vance Sterling contained more than just the subject line. Buried in the text, designed to look like legal boilerplate, was the instruction, a time and a place. The Willamette Heritage Vault, Portland. 2:00 p.m., Friday. Friday, that's tomorrow. A new set of problems crystallizes in my mind, sharp and immediate. I am a prisoner. Ethan has my car keys. To keep you from getting lost, Mom. Chloe has control of my bank account, which holds the paltry sum of my monthly pension. I have no access to cash. I have no way to get to Portland, a 2-hour drive away. They have me boxed in, physically and financially. They think they have thought of everything, but they are their father's children, and they have his arrogance. They don't have his foresight, and they don't have mine. I look at the medic alert necklace hanging by my bed. Another gift from them, a symbol of my frailty. A button I am supposed to press if I fall, if I feel faint, if I need help. They see it as a leash. I now see it as a key. Morning comes. I go about my routine. I drink my tea. I read a chapter of my book. I wait. I wait until I hear Ethan and his wife leave to take the kids to school. I wait until the house is quiet. Then I walk calmly to the center of my small room, take a deep breath, and press the button on the necklace. A calm, professional voice fills the room from the base station. "This is Med Alert, Mrs. Sterling. Is everything all right?" I let my voice tremble. I pitch it higher, make it reedy and thin. "Help! I can't breathe." I clutch my chest, a gesture for an audience of one, myself. My chest. It hurts. Pains. Sharp. I learned the symptoms of a cardiac event years ago, from a medical journal. I am a chemist. I know the value of research. "Okay, Olivia. Stay calm. We are dispatching an ambulance to your location immediately. They should be there in 5 to 7 minutes. Stay on the line with me." I let the phone drop, making a clattering sound. I lie down on the floor, on my side. The performance must be complete. The paramedics find me just like that, a crumpled old woman on the floor. They are kind, efficient, their faces etched with professional concern. They ask me questions I can't seem to answer, my words slurring together. They load me onto a gurney, wrap me in a scratchy blanket, and wheel me out of the guest house, past the windows of the main house where my cage was built. As they roll me toward the ambulance, I see Chloe's car pulling into the driveway. She must have gotten an alert. Her face is a mask of panic and annoyance. Good. Let her be annoyed. Let her think she has another crisis to manage. At the hospital, the emergency room is a symphony of controlled chaos. Beeping machines, hushed but urgent voices, the squeak of rubber soles on linoleum. They park my gurney in a bay, and a nurse starts asking me questions. I remain limp, confused, offering vague answers. She draws my blood, attaches me to a heart monitor. The rhythmic beep of the machine is the new clock I'm watching. I am a ghost here. An elderly woman with suspected heart trouble. I am one of a dozen others just like me. I am invisible. For 2 hours, I wait. I watch the ebb and flow of doctors and nurses. I see the shift change. The frantic pace of the morning rush gives way to the slightly calmer rhythm of the late morning. A trauma case comes in. A car accident. Most of the staff are pulled toward the main trauma bay. That is my window. The nurse who was watching me is gone, replaced by a younger man who is busy entering notes into a computer. With movements that are slow and deliberate, I slide my legs off the side of the gurney. The paper gown crinkles. I slip off the heart monitor sensor from my finger. The machine next to me flatlines, letting out a long, piercing tone. The nurse's head snaps up. His eyes go wide, but he's looking at the machine, not at me. In that split second of confusion, I am already moving. I slide behind the curtain of my bay, my bare feet cold on the tiled floor. I walk, not run, toward a set of double doors marked Ambulance Bay. It's a side exit. I push the bar and step out into the cool afternoon air. The alarm from my flatlining heart monitor is a faint, distant shriek. It feels like a starting pistol. I'm standing in the back parking lot of a hospital, wearing nothing but a thin, backless paper gown and a pair of cheap hospital socks. Freedom feels shockingly cold, but I am not without resources. I reach down and slip off my left shoe, the comfortable, worn-out loafer I had insisted on wearing. I peel back the insole. Taped to the bottom is a single, crisp, folded $100 bill. One day, David's voice, a memory so clear it's almost a sound. This will be the most important $100 of your life. Keep it in your left shoe, always. He was right. I walk to the street, my heart pounding for real this time. A wild, exhilarating drumbeat of pure adrenaline. I flag the first taxi I see. The driver, a weary-looking man with a kind face, pulls over. He looks at my attire, his eyebrows raised in a silent question. The Willamette Heritage Building, downtown Portland, I say, my voice no longer frail or confused. It is clear and steady. And please, don't spare the horses. I slide into the back seat, the worn vinyl cool against my skin. I hand him the $100 bill. Keep the change. As the taxi pulls away from the curb, I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the window. An old woman in a paper gown, her hair a mess, a wild look in her eyes. I don't recognize her, but I know, with a certainty that settles deep in my bones, that I am finally on my way to meet the keeper, and the woman who left that guest house this morning is gone forever. The taxi smelled of pine-scented air freshener and stale cigarette smoke, a combination that clung to the back of my throat. Outside, the gray Oregon landscape blurred into a watercolor wash of greens and browns. Each mile that separated me from Maple Creek felt like shedding a layer of dried, cracking skin. The money tucked in my shoe, the secret stash David had insisted upon years ago, was a small, solid weight, a tangible link to a man my children thought they knew. They remembered a quiet accountant, a man who shuffled papers and spoke in hushed tones. They didn't know the man who taught me how to hide a roll of bills in the sole of a shoe, who had a go bag packed in the back of his closet for a decade, who spoke of contingencies and protocols with the same dispassionate calm he used to discuss the stock market. The address Vance had provided was a steel and glass monolith in downtown Portland that scraped at the low-hanging clouds. It screamed of money and power, but in a sterile, anonymous way. There was no grand name etched into the facade, only a number. The lobby was a cavern of white marble and hushed efficiency. A receptionist, with a surgically precise smile, directed me to the top floor without me even having to state my name. They were expecting me. Of course, they were. The elevator ascended with a silent, stomach-lurching speed. The woman who had left her son's guest house this morning, a frail creature feigning a cardiac event, was being systematically erased with every foot I rose above the city. The woman arriving was someone else entirely. She was a chemist. She was a wife who had kept her husband's secrets. She was a ghost about to find her machine. The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area that was more art gallery than office. The air was cool and filtered. A single man stood waiting, his back to me, looking out a floor-to-ceiling window at the sprawling city below. He was tall, thin, and dressed in a suit so perfectly tailored it seemed less like clothing and more like a second skin. He didn't turn as I stepped out. "The drive from Maple Creek is tedious," he said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that held no warmth whatsoever. I trust it was uneventful after you departed from the hospital. He turned then. This was not a lawyer. Lawyers, even the most ruthless ones, carry a certain scholarly stoop, a faint air of paper and precedent. This man was all sharp angles and polished surfaces. His eyes, the color of slate, assessed me with an unnerving stillness. There was no pity in them, no empathy. It was the gaze of a predator sizing up an unknown quantity. This was Elias Vance. It was a necessary detour, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I walked towards him, my sensible shoes making no sound on the polished concrete floor. My children are thorough in their monitoring. A flicker of something, not approval, perhaps just acknowledgement, passed through his eyes. So I have gathered. Your husband, David, always said you were resourceful. He gestured towards a severe-looking leather chair. Please. I sat. The chair was cold and unyielding. The office was a monument to minimalist power. There was no clutter, no family photos, no personal effects, just a large desk that was a single, seamless piece of dark wood, a computer, and the city of Portland laid out before us like a map. You must have many questions, Olivia, Vance began, taking the seat opposite me. He didn't lean back. He perched on the edge, a coiled spring of energy. I have one that matters, I said, meeting his gaze. You're not on the letterhead for Vance and Sterling, the firm Chloe contacted. You're not a lawyer. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Correct. I am a consultant. The law firm is a useful front. One of many. David was a man who believed in layers, in firewalls, both digital and human. He let that hang in the air. This was the first test. He was watching to see how I would react to the confirmation of deception. Would I be flustered? Outraged? Confused? I simply waited. In chemistry, you learn to be patient. You add a reagent, and you watch. You don't rush the reaction. David was my employer, Vance continued, his voice dropping slightly. And my mentor, for 30 years. What your children know of him, what anyone in your town knows of him, is a carefully constructed fiction. The quiet accountant in the suburbs was a role he played. I knew. On some deep intuitive level, I had always known. The late-night phone calls in a language I didn't recognize. The sudden, unexplained trips. The way he could look at a complex financial report and see not numbers but patterns, weaknesses, opportunities, the same way I could look at a molecular structure. We were both architects of a sort. I built molecules. He built something else. He wasn't an accountant, I stated. Not as a question, but as a fact I was finally allowed to speak aloud. No, Vance said. He was the architect and operator of the most sophisticated and successful money laundering network on the entire West Coast. Possibly in the country. He moved money for people you read about in headlines, and for people you will never hear of because they are too powerful to ever be named. He washed it, cleaned it, and made it disappear into legitimate-looking assets so thoroughly that the federal government could audit his books for a century and find nothing more than a man who was exceptionally good at managing a modest portfolio of municipal bonds. The scale of it was breathtaking. I had imagined secrets. I had imagined hidden wealth, perhaps some tax evasion, something sordid but contained. This was an empire, an invisible, illegal empire. And my quiet, gentle David, the man who hummed off-key while doing the dishes, had been its king. Why tell me this now? I asked, my heart a slow, heavy drum in my chest. Why not 5 years ago, when he passed? Because the Nightingale Protocol had a 5-year failsafe, Vance explained, his eyes fixed on me. It was David's design. He believed that if anything were to happen to him, his organization needed a period of stability, a cool-down. More importantly, he needed to know if his successor would be viable. The protocol was contingent on 2 things. First, that you, Olivia, would need it, that your circumstances would become untenable. Second, that you would have the presence of mind and the strength of will to answer the call when it came. He leaned forward, the intensity in his gaze sharpening. He spoke of you often, not the wife or the mother. He spoke of the chemist, the brilliant mind he met in college, the woman who could see 3 steps ahead in any complex equation. He believed that woman was still there, but he had to be sure. My purpose here, Olivia, is not simply to hand you a check. It is to vet you, to determine if you are the woman David believed you to be, or if you are the person your children see. The air crackled with the unspoken challenge. I was being audited, not by a tax agent, but by my husband's ghost, channeled through this cold, precise man. He was looking for the chemist, for the strategist. He was looking for a partner, a leader, not a victim. I thought of Ethan's sneer at my birthday party, of Chloe's casual cruelty as she seized control of my finances. I thought of the prepaid cremation box, the ultimate dismissal. They had made a fatal error. They had mistaken my patience for senility, my silence for weakness. They had watered the soil of my grief with their contempt, and they had no idea what they had cultivated. My children see what I allow them to see, I said, my voice low and clear. It's a very effective camouflage. You of all people should appreciate the value of a good cover story, Mr. Vance. I let a small, cold smile touch my lips. Now, tell me about the protocol. The faintest hint of a smile touched Vance's own lips in return. It wasn't a warm expression, but one of mutual, professional respect. The audition was over. The partnership was about to begin. The Nightingale Protocol, Vance began, turning his chair to face the large monitor on his desk, is not just a plan. It's a living system, a series of keys that unlock every facet of David's network. He typed a rapid string of characters, and the screen came alive with a complex web of diagrams, flow charts, and strings of code. It looked like a map of a galaxy. When David passed, the system went into a state of automated hibernation. Assets were frozen in place, communications were rerouted through dormant servers, and all active operations were spun down into self-sustaining, passive investments. It was designed to run silent for exactly 5 years. He pointed to a cluster of nodes on the screen. These are holding companies in the Cayman Islands, Panama, Luxembourg. These are real estate portfolios in Dubai and Tokyo. These are silent partnerships in tech startups and biopharmaceutical research firms. It's a web, and David held every single string. My mind, the mind of a chemist, immediately saw the structure. It wasn't chaos. It was an elegant, balanced equation. Each piece was designed to offset another. For every high-risk venture, there was a stable, low-yield asset. It was brilliant. It was David. What is the total value? I asked, my voice betraying none of the awe I felt. Vance looked at me, a long, measuring glance. Your children believe you are destitute. They fight over a house and what little is left in your pension. They sold your wedding ring for property taxes. He said it without emotion, a simple statement of fact. They are fighting over scraps from the table. He turned back to the screen and entered one final command. A single number appeared in the center of the web, stark and white against the dark background. It took my breath away. It wasn't millions. It was a 9-figure sum, closer to 10. It was a number so large it felt abstract, like the distance to a star. Hundreds of millions of dollars, untraceable, untouchable, and now waiting. The protocol's 5-year window is now active, Vance said. We have a limited time to assume control before the system, by its own design, begins to permanently liquidate and disperse the assets into untraceable charitable trusts. We need to act. But before we can move a single dollar, we have a problem. You. Me? Yes. You, Olivia Reed, the 70-year-old widow from Maple Creek. A woman with your official financial profile cannot suddenly have access to this kind of capital. It would raise every red flag from the IRS to the FBI. We need a bridge, a plausible explanation, a fiction so mundane, so utterly believable, that no one would ever think to look beneath it. He leaned back, the gesture an invitation. We need a cover story. My mind raced. How do you explain a fortune of that magnitude appearing overnight? An inheritance? No. That would be traceable, and David had no known wealthy relatives. A long-lost stock discovery. Too complicated, too many holes to poke in it. It had to be simple. It had to be common. Something that happened to ordinary people. I thought of the gas station convenience stores, the signs in the window. I thought of the stories on the local news, the grinning faces of people holding giant checks. It was the stuff of dreams for people like Ethan and Chloe. It was the one thing they might actually believe, because it aligned with their own shallow fantasies of getting rich without effort. "A lottery win," I said. Vance raised an eyebrow. "A lottery win?" "It's perfect," I explained, the idea crystallizing in my mind. "It's the ultimate fantasy of the common person. It requires no explanation of business acumen, no complex backstory. It's an act of random, dumb luck. It's perfectly mundane, perfectly believable for a woman like me, a quiet old widow who buys a ticket on a whim." Vance was silent for a long moment, his slate-gray eyes boring into me. I could see the tumblers turning in his mind, assessing the variables, calculating the risks. He was processing it not as a storyteller, but as a risk management expert. Then, for the first time since I'd met him, he smiled. It was a genuine, predatory smile, a flash of white that lit up his severe features. "That's brilliant," he said, the words full of admiration. "It's so unsophisticated, it's genius. No one would ever suspect it's a cover for one of the largest criminal enterprises on the coast. It hides in plain sight." He turned back to his keyboard, his fingers flying across the keys. "It's settled then. The official story is that you, Olivia Reed, are the sole winner of last month's multi-state Powerball jackpot, the one with no publicly announced winner. But there are records," I countered. "They know where the winning ticket was sold. There are security cameras, press releases." Vance waved a dismissive hand. "Records can be created. Digital histories can be rewritten. We don't just react to the world, Olivia. We shape it." He picked up a sleek, encrypted satellite phone from his desk and dialed a number. "Initiate Project Jackpot," he said into the phone, his voice all business. "Full spectrum fabrication. I need a complete digital and physical history for a winning Powerball ticket, purchased 2 weeks ago at a quick E-Mart on the I-5 corridor, just south of Eugene. I want transaction records, security footage doctored and looped into their system archives, and a full press blackout. The official story will be that the winner chose to remain anonymous through a private trust. I want a shell trust established in Delaware, effective yesterday, and I want a series of convincing articles planted in the archives of local news websites, a small piece about the winning ticket being sold, another about the prize going unclaimed, all time-stamped correctly. I want it bulletproof. You have 48 hours. He ended the call and placed the phone back on the desk with a quiet click. For the next 2 days, my organization will create a reality. By the time you return to Maple Creek, you will be, for all official intents and purposes, one of the wealthiest women in the state, a very, very lucky old lady. A chill ran down my spine. The sheer power at his fingertips was terrifying and exhilarating. He wasn't just moving money, he was manufacturing truth. David hadn't just built a financial network, he had built a machine that could alter reality itself, and he had just handed me the keys. While they work on that, Vance said, his tone shifting back to the immediate task at hand, you and I have work to do. We need to understand every asset, every moving part of this empire, and you, he said, locking his eyes on mine, need to learn how to be its queen. I returned to Maple Creek on a nondescript shuttle bus, smelling of disinfectant and regret. I hobbled up the driveway to Ethan's house, making sure my limp was pronounced, my expression one of weary confusion. I was the picture of a frail old woman returning from a foolish, failed errand. Ethan was waiting for me at the door, his arms crossed, a smug, impatient look on his face. Well, did you find your imaginary lawyer in Portland? Did he promise you a magical fortune? He sneered. I looked up at him, letting my eyes seem watery and unfocused. It was a mistake. I got confused. The man I was supposed to meet, he wasn't there. I think I had the wrong address. I let my voice tremble just a little. I'm so sorry to have worried you, Ethan. The relief that washed over his face was so profound, it was almost comical. He had been worried, not for my safety, but that some shred of my autonomy might have survived his efforts to crush it. My apparent failure was a victory for him. It's fine, Mom, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. We'll sort it out. Chloe and I have been talking. We're looking into some very nice places for you, places where you'll be safe, and you won't have to worry about getting confused anymore. I let him guide me inside, my hand on his arm, playing the part of the dependent mother. "That's very thoughtful of you, dear," I murmured. Inside, Chloe was on the phone in the living room. "Yes, the memory issues are getting worse," she was saying in a loud, performative whisper, clearly meant for me to overhear. "We need a facility with a good Medicaid rating and a specialized memory care unit. Full-time supervision is a must." She hung up and gave me a smile that was all teeth. "Hi, Mom. Tough trip?" "I'm just tired," I said, sinking into an armchair. I let them fuss over me, bringing me a glass of water, talking about me as if I weren't in the room. They discussed my decline, my vulnerability, their burden. I listened, and I nodded, and I looked as lost and helpless as I possibly could. They saw a problem being managed, a loose end being neatly tied up. They saw a victory. They didn't see the ghost in the machine. That night, after they had gone to bed, confident that their mother was sedated by weakness and exhaustion, I went into my small room in the guest house. The room was sparse, a reflection of how they saw me. A few old paperbacks, a knitting basket, a faded photo of David on the nightstand. It was the cell they had built for me. But they had made a critical error. They had allowed me a locked door. I turned the flimsy lock and sat on the edge of the bed. From the lining of my handbag, I retrieved the device Vance had given me. It was no bigger than a deck of cards, a smooth black satellite phone with military-grade encryption. There was only one number programmed into it. I put a single earbud in my ear and pressed the call button. It connected instantly with no ringing. "Vance," his voice came through, crisp and clear, a world away from the muffled sitcom sounds leaking from the main house. "Report," I said, my voice low and steady. The frail, trembling woman from the living room was gone. In her place was the chemist, the strategist, the queen. "Project Jackpot is 90% complete," Vance reported. "The digital breadcrumbs are laid. The news articles are live in the archives. The trust is established. By morning, the Lottery Commission's internal records will reflect your win. The fiction is becoming fact." "Good," I said, looking at the photo of David. His smile seemed to hold a secret I was only now beginning to understand. "Let's move on to Phase 2. The portfolio in the Caymans, the one tied to the pharmaceutical shell company, Innovent." David's notes indicated it was high risk, but highly liquid. "It is," Vance confirmed. "It's invested heavily in emerging gene editing startups. Volatile. I've been reading their prospectuses. The technology is sound, but the market is nervous," I said, picturing the complex molecular diagrams I'd studied online using the library's public computer, a place my children would never imagine me going. "The anxiety is emotional, not logical. Liquidate 30%. Move the capital into the Swiss holding account we discussed. Use the rest to acquire a controlling interest in the smaller of the two startups, the one based in Heidelberg. Their lead researcher is on the verge of a breakthrough, but they're underfunded. We can buy it for pennies on the dollar." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear Vance recalibrating his assessment of me. He had vetted the woman. Now he was dealing with the CEO. "Consider it done," he said, a new note of respect in his tone. "The transfer will be complete by the time the European markets open." "Excellent," I said. "Keep me updated." I ended the call and placed the phone back in its hiding place. I looked around the small, pathetic room they had assigned me. They thought this was my world. A tiny, shrinking box. While they slept, dreaming of how to dispose of me, I was moving unseen armies of money across the globe. I was toppling and building empires in the dark. They were discussing which nursing home had the softest food, while I was orchestrating a multi-million-dollar corporate takeover from their guest house. The irony was so bitter, so profound it was almost sweet. They had wanted me to be small, to be silent, to be nothing. And I had obliged. I played the fool for them, the doddering old woman lost in her memories. And in my silence, I was forging the thunderbolt that would burn their world to the ground. They believed they were writing the last chapter of my story. They had no idea I was the author of theirs. The living room feels smaller today, stuffy with the cloying scent of Chloe's jasmine-scented air freshener, and thick with a smug, suffocating concern. They sit me down on the floral sofa, the one with the sagging cushions that have molded to the shape of my grief over the years. Ethan is on my left, his posture a study in performative solemnity. Chloe is on my right, her hand patting my knee with a rhythm that feels less like comfort and more like a countdown. Across from us, in my husband's favorite wingback chair, sits a man in a slightly too shiny polyester suit. His name is Mr. Abernathy, and his business card, which Ethan had left on the kitchen counter, identifies him as a realtor. He's here to appraise the house for a potential sale, a ghoul in a cheap suit, ready to pick over the bones of my life. This is their show of force, my intervention. I keep my head bowed, my hands trembling ever so slightly in my lap, a performance I have perfected over 5 long years. I focus on a loose thread on the upholstery, making it the anchor of my feigned fragility. Ethan clears his throat, the sound echoing with manufactured gravity. "Mom," he begins, his voice the one he uses for difficult employees and misbehaving children. "We need to talk. Chloe and we're worried." "We've been worried for a long time." Chloe's hand tightens on my knee. "We love you so much, Mom. That's why this is so hard. We just can't stand to see you like this anymore." Confused. Forgetting things. It's not safe for you to be alone. Alone? I am never alone. I am their full-time, unpaid nanny, their chef, their laundress. I am the ghost that keeps their pristine lives running smoothly. The only time I am alone is when they have no immediate use for me. Mr. Abernathy leans forward, a practiced, predatory sympathy on his face. "Olivia," he says, using my first name with a familiarity that makes my skin crawl. "Your children have expressed their deep concern for your well-being. They've been exploring some wonderful assisted living communities, places with 24-hour care, activities, other people your age. This house, it's a lot for you to manage." I can feel his eyes darting around the room, not seeing a home filled with memories, but calculating square footage, noting the crown molding, assessing the market value of the fireplace. He's already sold it in his head. "The market is very strong right now," he continues, his voice smooth as oil. "Selling would provide a very comfortable nest egg for your future. It would take all the burden off your shoulders. My burden. The burden of living in the house my husband and I built. The house where I raised these 2 vipers, the burden of breathing my own air." "We've found a place, Mom," Ethan says, pulling out a glossy brochure from the folder on his lap. "It's called Golden Meadows. It has a garden. You've always liked gardening." He slides the brochure onto the coffee table. The picture on the front is of a smiling, silver-haired couple playing shuffleboard. It looks less like a home and more like a holding pen for the forgotten. He thinks a picture of a petunia is enough to erase a lifetime. "We've already put down a deposit," Chloe adds, her voice a triumphant whisper. "We had to act fast. There's a waiting list. We did it for you." They did it for them. They want the equity. They want the freedom from the nagging responsibility of a mother who has outlived her usefulness. They want to cash me in like a savings bond. The cruelty is so mundane, so suburban. It's not a dramatic poisoning. It's death by 1,000 administrative decisions, by 1,000 well-meaning, self-serving sentences. "So," Ethan says, his tone shifting from concern to business, "we've made a decision for you. Mr. Abernathy is here to do the official appraisal today. We can have the paperwork signed by the end of the week. You can move into Golden Meadows by the 1st of next month. It's all taken care of." He leans back, crossing his arms. The benevolent dictator. Chloe smiles, a brilliant, relieved smile that doesn't reach her eyes. They think it's over. They think they've won. They look at me, this frail, hunched, silent old woman, and see a problem that has finally been solved. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment longer, letting them savor their victory. I let them believe they hold all the cards. I let them think my silence is acquiescence, my trembling hands a sign of senile fear. In reality, my mind is a block of ice, perfectly calm, perfectly clear. I am listening not to their words, but to the ticking of a clock only I can hear. And right on cue, the doorbell rings. The sound is sharp, decisive, cutting through the thick, self-congratulatory atmosphere of the room. Ethan frowns, annoyed by the interruption to his coronation. "I'll get it," he says, sighing with theatrical impatience. "Probably just a delivery. Honestly, the timing of these people." He walks to the front door, and I hear the lock turn. There's a moment of silence, and then a voice I know better than my own heartbeat. A voice as smooth and solid as polished granite. It's Elias Vance. "Ethan," Vance says. It's not a question. It's a statement of fact. Who are you?" Ethan stammers. "We're in the middle of a private family matter." "I believe this matter concerns my client," Vance's voice replies, calm and unyielding. "May we come in?" Ethan doesn't answer. A moment later, he backs into the living room, his face pale with confusion. Following him is Mr. Vance, looking like he was carved from a more expensive century, his dark suit tailored to perfection. He is flanked by two other people, a man and a woman, who are not dressed in cheap polyester. They radiate an aura of quiet, lethal competence. Their suits are weapons, their briefcases are shields. Behind them, a discreet but undeniably present security guard positions himself in the entryway, his presence turning our cozy suburban home into a secured asset. Chloe gasps, her hand flying to her throat. Mr. Abernathy, the realtor, seems to shrink in his chair, suddenly aware that he is a minnow in a tank with a shark, and I move. It's the first thing they notice. I don't ask for help. I don't groan with effort. I simply place my hands on my knees and stand up. My spine, which has been dutifully stooped in a question mark of senility for 5 years, straightens into an exclamation point. The tremor in my hands vanishes. I lift my head, and the hazy, downcast gaze I've perfected is gone, replaced by a look so direct, so cold, that Ethan physically flinches. I look at my son, at his slack-jawed shock, and my voice comes out, not the reedy, wavering whisper they are used to, but the clear, resonant tone of a woman who once commanded laboratories and boardrooms. "Your decision," I say, the words cutting through the silence like shards of glass, "is irrelevant." All eyes are on me now. The power in the room has shifted so completely, it's almost audible, a low hum of changing currents. Chloe is staring at me as if I've grown a second head. Vance steps forward, moving with the unhurried grace of a man who has never had to rush in his life. He holds 2 pristine, cream-colored envelopes. He doesn't look at me. His focus is entirely on my children. He extends one envelope to Ethan and the other to Chloe. They take them dumbly, their hands trembling for real this time. "Eviction notices," Vance announces, his voice a dispassionate instrument of fact. He gestures vaguely around the room. "The Nightingale Trust, of which your mother, Olivia Sterling, is the sole trustee and beneficiary, is the legal owner of this property and all assets within it. Your residency here, as stipulated by the Trust's charter, was contingent upon her continued well-being and comfort. A review has found that you have failed, catastrophically, to meet the terms of that agreement. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." Ethan tears his envelope open. His eyes scan the dense legal text, his face a kaleidoscope of confusion, denial, and dawning panic. Chloe can only stare at hers, her knuckles white. "What is this?" she shrieks, her voice cracking. "Nightingale Trust, what are you talking about? The house is... It's Mom's. She won the lottery. We saw the papers. She can't do this. You can't do this." And that's when I laugh. It's not the quiet, wheezing chuckle of a frail old woman. It's a real laugh, deep and rich and full of a dark, satisfying mirth that has been fermenting for half a decade. The sound shocks them more than anything else that has happened. It's the laugh of a stranger. I walk slowly toward them, my steps even and sure on the hardwood floor. I stop in front of the coffee table and pick up the glossy brochure for Golden Meadows. I look at the smiling, vacant couple playing shuffleboard, and then I meet Chloe's terrified eyes. "The lottery?" I say, my voice dripping with an amusement so cold it could freeze fire. "Oh, honey, That's the story for the IRS. A charming little piece of fiction Mr. Vance's associates created to explain a sudden, significant influx of liquid capital. Necessary paperwork, you understand. I let the brochure drop from my fingers. It flutters to the carpet. The truth, I continue, my gaze shifting to Ethan, who looks like he's about to be sick, is much more interesting. You spent 5 years tearing this house apart, looking for your father's secret money. You went through his old files, you tapped the walls, you dug up the goddamn rose bushes. You thought he was a clever little thief who skimmed a few million and hid it under a floorboard. I pause, letting the weight of their pathetic, greedy efforts settle on them. You miscalculated, I say softly. Your father wasn't a thief who stole from the bank. He was the bank. He didn't skim. He built. He built an empire of shadows and numbers that stretches from Seattle to San Diego, a private, invisible financial institution for clients who value discretion above all else. And when he died, he didn't hide the key under the mattress. He gave it to me. Their faces crumble. Not in anger anymore, but in a profound, soul-shattering horror. It's the look of people who thought they were playing checkers and have just been informed that the game was chess all along, and they were never even a pawn. They were just the dust on the board. The scale of their miscalculation is finally dawning on them, and it is an abyss. They weren't just trying to swindle a frail old woman out of her house. They were trying to pick the pocket of a queen, and they didn't even know she was wearing a crown. This was never about the money, not really. It was never about the house or the lottery winnings. This is about power. The absolute, unassailable power they never knew existed, and which I now wield. They stand there, paralyzed in the wreckage of their reality, the eviction notices hanging limply from their hands. The air is dead silent. Even Mr. Abernathy seems to have stopped breathing. The only sound is the quiet hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, a mundane noise from a world that no longer exists for them. Then, a sound. A sharp, electronic buzz. Chloe's phone, sitting on the end table beside her. A notification lights up the screen. She stares at it, her mind too shattered to process the simple act of reading. The buzzing continues, insistent. Finally, her fiancé's face pops up on the screen. She numbly swipes to answer, putting it on speaker without thinking. "Chloe, what the hell is going on?" His voice screams through the tiny speaker, tinny and panicked. "The funding, our Series A funding, it's gone. It was just pulled. Some anonymous offshore consortium called in the marker. They just vaporized it. The whole company is going under. They said the lead investor invoked a morality clause. What did you do?" Chloe's mouth opens, but no sound comes out. Her phone slips from her grasp and clatters onto the floor. As if on a timer, another notification sounds. This one is from Ethan's phone. He fumbles for it, his movements clumsy, robotic. It's a series of alerts, one after another. A text from his bank. An email from their fraud department. He reads the first one aloud, his voice a hollow whisper. Account activity alert. Your business accounts, personal accounts, and all associated lines of credit have been frozen, effective immediately. Another notification pings. He reads again. Pending a full-scale IRS investigation into felony tax fraud and identity theft. His eyes, wide with terror, lift from the screen and find mine. The investigation was triggered by an anonymous, highly detailed tip regarding the fraudulent use of another individual's social security number to secure loans and open credit cards. My mother's identity. It's not a chaotic explosion of rage. There is no shouting, no grand pronouncements from my side. It's just this, a series of quiet digital beeps that signal the end of their lives as they know them. It is clean. It is efficient. It is utterly devastating. It's a series of silent surgical strikes executed with the precision of a chemist mixing volatile compounds. My strikes. Planned for years, waiting patiently on a server, triggered by a single keyword from me to Vance an hour ago. Intervention. I watch the blood drain from their faces, watch the comprehension settle in. The stolen ring, the maxed-out credit cards, the condescending lectures about my meager pension, all of it, every single cut, Every single humiliation was a piece of evidence I was cataloging. They thought they were the predators, cleverly fleecing a helpless old woman. They never once considered that they were the lab rats, and the experiment was finally and fatally complete. I feel nothing. Not pity, not rage, not even satisfaction. Just a vast, cold, quiet emptiness. The silence in the room is my true inheritance. It's the only thing of value I have left to give them. I don't watch them leave. I hear it. The sound of a life imploding is not a single, clean shatter of glass. It's a series of ugly, wet thuds and scrapes. It's the frantic slam of dresser drawers, the shriek of packing tape being ripped from a roll with angry, clumsy hands. It's Chloe's voice, sharp and thin, slicing through the air, accusing Ethan of bringing this down on them with his sloppy bookkeeping. It's Ethan's guttural roar back, blaming her fiancé's House of Cards business empire that Vance had dismantled with a single phone call. Their recriminations are a frantic tennis match of blame, the ball a searing hot coal of their own making. They aren't speaking to me. I no longer exist in their universe as a person. I am simply the gaping crater where their future used to be. I remain seated in the armchair David loved, the worn leather cool against my skin. Vance's men, quiet and efficient specters in dark suits, move with a practiced calm that is a chilling counterpoint to my children's hysteria. They don't speak, they simply are. A presence that ensures the transition is smooth, that nothing of mine is taken, and that nothing of theirs is left behind. I hear a thud against the wall in the hallway, followed by a string of curses from Ethan. A box dropped. A life in disarray. I rise, my joints no longer feigning the ache of a helpless old woman. I walk past the living room, past the threshold where they performed their grand theater of filial piety for their social media audience. The air in the house is already changing. The cloying, sweet smell of their duplicity is beginning to dissipate, replaced by the clean, neutral scent of vacancy. Upstairs, in the small guest room that had been my cage, I pack my own things. The process takes less than 5 minutes. There is no frantic rush, only a deliberate selection of artifacts. My well-worn copy of Pauling's General Chemistry, my graduate thesis on crystallographic structures, its pages yellowed and soft. These were the parts of me they had tried to bury under a mountain of condescension, the symbols of the mind they had dismissed as senile. I placed them in a small leather satchel. Beside them, I lay David's watch. The silver band is cool, the tiny engraved nightingale on the clasp almost invisible to the naked eye. It's not just a timepiece. It's a key. A promise. The last thing I pack is a framed photograph from a life before them, a life I am only now beginning to reclaim. It's David and me on the Oregon coast, decades younger, the wind in our hair, our faces alight with a secret joy. I walk back downstairs as the front door slams shut for the final time, the sound echoing with a finality that is both brutal and liberating. The engine of Ethan's oversized SUV growls to life, then fades down the street, taking with it the last vestiges of the life I had endured. The silence that rushes in to fill the void is vast and absolute. It's not an empty silence. It is a clean silence, a rich silence. Vance is standing by the door, his expression unreadable. "It's done, Olivia," he says, his voice a low rumble. I look around the room, at the furniture that holds so many ghosts. "No, Elias," I reply, my own voice steady and clear, a tone my children had never heard. "It's just begun. The house, the money, the empire. It was never the goal. It was the weapon. And its first strike had been to clear the field. The ride to Portland is quiet. I watch the familiar suburban landscape of Maple Creek blur and dissolve into the rain-slicked highways of the city. The streetlights paint long, fleeting strokes of gold and white across Vance's stoic face. We don't speak of what happened. We don't need to. The conversation is in the smooth, powerful hum of the car's engine, in the secure silence between us. This isn't a celebration. It's a debriefing. My new home is not a home at all. It's a strategic position. A penthouse apartment that occupies the entire top floor of a sleek, anonymous glass tower. Vance's people had secured it under a corporate name that was itself a shell within a shell. When the private elevator doors slide open directly into the living space, I'm met not with warmth, but with an expanse of polished concrete floors, white walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows. The view is staggering. The entire city of Portland is laid out below me like a circuit board, a glittering, complex network of lights and life. Vance gives me a brief tour. The security systems are military-grade. The communications are encrypted. The staff are his most trusted operatives, vetted over decades. It's sterile. It's empty. It's a beautiful, luxurious prison of my own choosing. After he leaves, I walk through the cavernous space. My footsteps echo. I run a hand along a cold marble countertop. There are no crayon marks on the walls, no smudged fingerprints on the glass, no lingering scent of burnt toast or microwaved dinners. There is no life here. Not yet. This isn't a happy ending. There is no music swelling in the background. This is a transfer of power, a coronation in an empty room. I stand before the vast wall of glass and look down at the city. It's not a beautiful vista. It's a chessboard. David's chessboard. For 5 years, I had played the part of a forgotten pawn, tucked away in a corner, underestimated and ignored. But the pawn had crossed the board. And now, I am the queen. I am the keeper of David's dark, intricate legacy. A legacy built on secrets and shadows, a world of numbers that moved silently through the arteries of the legitimate world. I am no longer Olivia, the dotty old mother. I am the nightingale, and the nightingale sings best in the dark. My phone, a new encrypted device given to me by Vance, buzzes on the granite island behind me. The vibration is harsh, alien in the profound quiet. I turn and look at the screen. The name flashes. Ethan. I let it ring until it cuts to voicemail. A moment later, it buzzes again. Chloe. The pattern repeats. The frantic, begging calls are a new kind of sound, a frequency of desperation I have never heard from them before. My old phone, the one they controlled, would have been filled with their demands, their sighs of exasperation. This is different. This is the sound of terror. Voicemail notifications begin to pop up, one after another. Then the texts start. Mom, please answer. We made a mistake, a terrible mistake. Chloe is falling apart. Please, call me. They took everything, Mom, everything. I don't read them all. I don't need to. I know what they say. I walk back to the window, the phone heavy in my hand. I look at my reflection in the dark glass, a silhouette set against the glittering expanse of the city. For a moment, I see the woman they saw. Old, frail, alone, a ghost. Then I look closer. The set of my jaw is different. The light in my eyes is not the dim flicker of confusion, but the steady, cold burn of purpose. I see a woman I barely recognize, forged in the crucible of their contempt. They called me destitute. They stood in my house, built by my husband's silent, dangerous work, and they announced to the world that I was penniless. And in a way, they were right. I was utterly destitute. I was starved of respect. I was bankrupt of love. I was impoverished of family. My ledgers were deep in the red with the debt of their cruelty. Now, I look out at the city, at the empire of silence and numbers that is my new reality, and I understand. I am rich. I am wealthy beyond their comprehension. I am rich in silence. The phone buzzes again. Ethan's name glows on the screen. It is a plea from a world that no longer exists for me, a world of noise, of lies, of hollow laughter, and sharp-edged words. I press my thumb to the screen, to the red icon. Decline. The silence that follows is the most valuable asset I now own. It is clean. It is absolute. It is total. And it is the only inheritance I will ever leave them.